See the stone set in your eyes. See the thorn twist in your side. I'm waiting for you. Sleight of hand and twist of fate on a bed of nails.
Hi again, folks. This is Ron. This is Star Wars Delusions of Granular. This is a Star Wars podcast where we come out with a new episode twice a week. We pick a Star Wars topic, we talk about it, we get granular with it. That's why we're called Delusions of Granular. You can find all of our episodes at delusionsofgranular.com. You can also find us on iTunes or Stitcher. Subscribe to us there if you like what you hear, and if you are kind, please do leave us a review. If you don't like what you hear and you're not kind, leave us a bad review. Doesn't matter. Like to hear your input either way. You can also follow us, facebook.com/SWDog, or on Twitter at SWDog77. Or if you would like to participate in the show, have ideas for the show, have beefs with the show, give us a call, 651-337-9364. That's 651-33-SWDOG. It's a hotline. We do not answer the phone, but we do listen to your messages. So if you have a message and you want to share your peace of mind with us, please do, and we will definitely take it into consideration for use on the show. Or, as always, you can just email us at swdog77@gmail.com. That's swdog77@gmail.com. And, just appreciate any and all input that you have. Alright, folks, so, gosh, it seems like such a long time ago already, but Force Friday happened, and I am just now finishing off all the books that came out. As you know, if you've been listening to my coverage of all the Force Friday books, the Journey to the Force Awakens covered off extensively on Star Wars Aftermath. Also covered off on the three short young adult books that came out, the Luke Skywalker adventure, the Han Solo and Chewbacca adventure, and the Princess Leia adventure. And finally, today's episode, whenever you're listening to this, is my take on Star Wars Lost Stars. This is, I feel like, the one book that didn't get a lot of play for coverage on Force Friday. It seems like Aftermath definitely had a lot of hype around it, and the three solo books, no pun intended there. I think that because they were kind of a trilogy of books, they had some cachet around them. They also had main characters' faces on the covers. But this book here, it's got an interesting cover. It's got the Rebel symbol as well as the Imperial symbol kind of cut in half side by side, as well as a Star Destroyer kind of looks like it's going down in flames, over a planet, and not a lot to make from that, really, right? Kind of I don't know. And also, this is also a young adult novel, so I think a lot of people are probably thinking, I don't really want to deal with this one. I can let this one pass, right? Well, I'm here to say, folks, that I think this one's really worth your while, right? So what is it about? Well, before I get into what it's about, I wanted to throw out this quote that I once heard George Lucas say. He had some kids coming up to him, whatever the event, maybe it was at Star Wars Celebration or something, and they were asking him, like their favorite character of the Stormtroopers, and why are the Stormtroopers so bad? Not bad shots, not that. They weren't asking that question, but they were asking why, these guys dressed all in white, why were they the bad guys, right? And, George, he had a interesting question on that, or answer to that. He says, the Stormtroopers aren't bad. They just work for a bad guy. And I was like, oh, that's a nice nice sentiment there, right? Well, I feel like this book takes that sentiment and expands upon it, right? So what this is really, and when I tell you the synopsis of this book, I know some of you out there are going to be like, this book is not for me at all, but let me tell you, it's well done, so hear me out. This story is a story, first of all, it's a romance between two characters, a Thane Kyrell and a Sienna Ray, right? And we meet them early on in the book. They're young kids on this planet, Delusion, and they are excited. The Empire is coming to their planet. They're going there for kind of a celebration that the Empire is kind of, coming to their planet. Feels very much like Empire Day in Rebels that we saw in the first season of Rebels. That the Empire is something to be celebrated and not feared. And, these two young kids, they have hopes of kind of joining the Imperial Academy and becoming part of the Empire. And, the quick synopsis here is as these two kind of go throughout the book, they start out as very close friends, end up becoming more than friends, becoming a bit of a romance there. And also being torn apart by the war. One of them, they both end up in the Empire, but one of them defects and, ends up joining the rebellion. So we have this romance that's one is a rebel and one is Imperial. And, it actually ends up making for quite a good read, and actually quite a deep read too. There's a lot going on in this book. So anyway, let me get into the details here. So Thane is the boy in this book, and Sienna is the girl. And like I said, they're from this planet, Delusion. They're actually from two different classes. The Thane character, his family is a little bit more well off, whereas Sienna comes from more of a poor family. Thane's family is not really happy that he's hanging out with Sienna, but they really do get along well. They end up kind of flying. They're they're not skyhoppers, but they're similar to that, I suppose. Kind of flying that around, teaching each other how to fly, teaching each other how to fly better and work together as a team. Like I said, they're very, very, very good friends. They end up kind of having a little secret hangout in a cave called the Fortress. They hang out there and they tell each other their deep, darkest secrets. And, they really kind of find a lot to console in each other. Thane has a older brother who's kind of a jerk. He is also joining the Imperial Academy. He gets in before Thane and just kind of is arrogant and not very good and doesn't really go far in the academy. Whereas Sienna, she is actually had a twin sister who died, so she carries around a leather bracelet throughout the book. Becomes very important later, but she likes to show her sister the world through her eyes. Basically, kind of keeping her, the memory of her sister alive. Anyway, like I said, they join the Imperial Academy. They actually get stationed on Coruscant. And here at this portion of the book, I was getting a little bit hung up on this portion. We meet a cast of characters. Thane has his roommates. Sienna has hers. We meet characters, names like Nash Windrider, Ved Voslo, Kendi Idel, and Jude Edvian. And I gotta say, this part, I was just like, this feels a lot like Harry Potter. We get the characters competing against each other, trying to outdo each other in class. A lot of school hijinks going on. It doesn't really feel like the Empire is a bad thing that these people are getting involved in. It feels like it's all kind of fun and games, and until a point where one of the projects that they're working on, Thane, I believe they're building cannons out of refuge, showing that they're able to kind of make do when materials are in short supply. And Thane is a little bit uncomfortable. He's more of a pilot than an engineer, but is able to make a cannon work. And before it gets reviewed by the teachers, it's sabotaged. The wires are cut, and Sienna is kind of blamed for it, and it kind of splits them apart for a good portion of this book. At least a few chapters. And as it turns out, we find out that this was all the Empire's doing, that they realized that these two characters were tight, and they were trying to kind of force them to be all about the Empire and kind of lose their personality, lose their ties to one another. The Empire is really what's going on here is the Empire is kind of taking their independence away from them, their individuality away from them, because the Empire is all about just kind of being all about the Empire and not really being about the individuals. Anyway, with that being said, the romance during this part was just starting to blossom. These two friends, once they realize what happened and they kind of get back together, they realize that they have feelings for one another beyond just friends. It's it doesn't go very far, but throughout the entire book, it's that these two characters are kind of tied together for the end till the end of time, right? And then we get to what I'm going to call the OT years, because, folks, I should say this book really spans quite a time period. Starts out 8 years after the fall of the Old Republic, and I was trying to do the math in my head, so this actually puts them, I think that puts these characters a little bit, a little bit older than Ezra in Rebels, but now I'm trying to figure it out, because Leia is in this, and she's about the same age as them. So maybe, I'm having a hard time, but basically 8 years after the fall of the Republic, that's when this book picks up. They graduate from the Academy right before the events of A New Hope. In fact, and again, this is where people are going to have issues with this book, because of this book definitely falls into the universe's small syndrome, because, basically the events of this book are now run parallel with the original trilogy. Okay, we have our two main characters. Thane actually gets stationed to the Death Star, whereas Sienna gets stationed on a Star Destroyer, the Devastator. And what we learned in a couple episodes back from the radio drama, I believe, is the Devastator is actually the Star Destroyer that captures Tantive 4 at the beginning of A New Hope. So we have our main characters in this book now very closely aligned to the events that we see in A New Hope. As Tantive 5 is getting boarded, we have Sienna is there on the Star Destroyer, and basically as Alderaan blows up, we have our characters in this book kind of reacting to that and reacting to it in very interesting ways. I mentioned a character prior to this, Nash Windrider. Nash Windrider is actually from Alderaan, and even though he's an Imperial, he has a hard time with the what the Empire just did. Not so much that he defects, but he stays in the Empire, but he definitely has issues. And what we find out is a lot of the Imperials, kind of the lower Imperials, have a lot of issues with what the Empire just did, blowing up an entire planet. And it's Thane. Thane is he's kind of always been kind of questioning authority throughout the book so far, but Sienna actually is very much the character that is truly loyal to the Empire, and she feels that the Empire's she rationalizes the Empire's action in blowing up a whole planet by it's their way of kind of preventing war from truly going any further. We know of the rebellion, but she feels like this is going to end things. And we move forward a little bit, and Thane is stationed. He stays a TIE fighter pilot, whereas Sienna goes and becomes more of a commander on the Star Destroyers. And anyway, his squadron gets sent off to investigate Dantooine to see if there's any rebel base there, and it's truly by coincidence that he's not on the Death Star when it blows up, but he knows that the Death Star blows up, and he just kind of is disgusted by all of this. He had friends on the Death Star. They lost. Both Sienna and Thane had friends there, where Sienna continues to rationalize the events around her. Thane, he defects and kind of goes pretty much underground for this portion of the book. And we kind of catch up with the two of them months later, and we skip forward, and Thane is actually working for kind of a group of smugglers run by a Wookiee. Wookiee with a heart of gold, I should say. They're smugglers, but they're not in it for any kind of wrongdoing. They're just trying to do good. A little bit of Robin Hood type thing going on here. And as he's kind of doing all this, he ends up running into a familiar name. He runs into Wedge Antilles, and Wedge kind of gets him to join the rebellion. And prior to this, Thane was just like, I'm not going to be a part of the rebellion. They're just as bad as the Empire. No governments are good. Blah blah blah. But he ends up joining the rebellion right before the events on Hoth, the Battle of Hoth, and we get more of their storyline being kind of interweaved throughout the original trilogy. We find out that Thane actually flew a snow speeder in the Battle of Hoth, helped to bring down a walker, and that Sienna was actually on Vader's Star Destroyer above Hoth, and she kind of realizes that Thane is not completely lost. That she sees that he is, just by his way of flying, his style of flying, she's able to point him out in the battle, and knows that he's still alive. And I should back up a little bit. The romance does happen. They actually do get together, and they do sleep together, and then kind of Sienna says, "Look, I choose the Empire over you, and when I get back, I'm gonna have to turn you in." And this is kind of a pivotal moment for Sienna as well as the book, because she actually, when she does go back, she says that Thane has committed suicide, and he hasn't actually defected. So even though she's very loyal, she does maintain loyalty to the man she loves. And, throughout from there, we kind of see their paths go in different directions. We get to kind of the battle of Endor, and I should say, the other thing that's kind of leads to a lot of drama in this book is the fact that they are on different sides, and they never know exactly when or if it'll ever happen, but there's always a possibility that they could actually kill each other, or one of them could kill another one in one of the battles that happens, and brings a little bit of tension throughout the book. But the Empire, as it rolls on, not a good thing, right? They end up, it's I don't think it's ever comes out, but basically the Empire kind of frames Sienna's mother for embezzlement, and she's sentenced to hard labor in prison. And Thane kind of stands by her during these hard times. They kind of get back together and kind of call a truce, sleep together, whatnot. But then they go back to, Thane goes back to being a rebel, and Sienna goes back to being an Imperial. And that's kind of how the book goes. It's well written. It's very engaging. It's very kind of really keeps your attention. But it doesn't wrap up as neatly as you would think, right? Throughout the entire book, or at least maybe the last third, I was just kind of yelling at Sienna. I was just like, kind of wake up. Like, the Empire's bad, and you're really just kind of you're so loyal to it for absolutely no good reason. And we even see this in the Nash Windrider character. He's very loyal to the Empire, even though they blew up his home planet. And I don't know. Like, I could see it a little bit with Sienna, but with Nash, I just felt like it was such a it got to the point where I didn't feel like it was realistic. Somebody, the government you work for blows up your home planet, and you still stick with them, even though there's a rebellion going on. It just seemed a little bit far-fetched to me, but I guess that shows how much the Empire was actually brainwashing their troops. So, towards the end, Battle of Endor, Sienna, she was on a Star Destroyer. It goes down. She's injured. She ends up kind of being rescued by the Empire, and she's kind of has a piece of shrapnel kind of lodged in her torso, and she has to go through therapy, regrow a liver, because apparently you can regrow organs in the Star Wars universe. Just takes time. And when she does this, they kind of strip her of all her belongings. And throughout this entire story, she kind of kept that leather bracelet that she hung onto as a reminder of her sister, and they kind of took it away from her. And that was kind of her last tie to humanity. She kind of just, at that point, she gives in to completely being of the Empire. She gets her own Star Destroyer, and she gets to command it. A Star Destroyer that, after the fall of the Death Star, a team of rebels kind of go after and try to bring down. And this is where I felt like the book really got to the journey to The Force Awakens, because, folks, the cover of this book really starts to make sense now, because the Star Destroyer that we're seeing going down in flames above a planet on the cover, that is the actual Star Destroyer that we've seen in the Force Awakens trailer. Yes, folks, the Star Destroyer crashes on Jakku. And this Star Destroyer was a Star Destroyer that Sienna commanded. So now we're actually, we're getting backstory to something that we are seeing in The Force Awakens. I was like, oh, okay, now we're getting some meat. We're getting some meat that probably will not be. My guess is they won't expand upon this in the movie, but will. If you've read the book, or if you're listening to me gab about the book, you'll know that yes, that Star Destroyer is actually a part of this book. So it goes down. Once again, our two main characters are kind of brought together because, Sienna was commander of the ship, and she was going to go down with the ship and not let it fall into rebel hands. Thane is boarding the ship. Realizes that only one person could be this dedicated to the Empire, and that person is Sienna, so he goes and tries to stop her. They get into this big brawl. He ends up rescuing her. They get off the ship in an escape pod, and he calls for rebel assistance to come and save them on Jakku, and he basically gets the love of his life thrown into prison because she's a Imperial war criminal. And that, folks, is pretty much how the book ends. Yeah, it doesn't have quite the happy ending that we were expecting. Thane feels like the rebels will go lenient on Sienna, but we never really find out. That's kind of left to our imagination what the fate of Sienna is. Is she let go by the rebels? Does she finally have a change of heart and decides not to be an Imperial anymore, even though the Empire is falling apart? It's never quite said, folks. It's never really said whether or not she finally ends up being truly loyal to the man she loves instead of the Empire she loves. But it was a good ride throughout. Like I said, there were definitely things that I was not, things that would, I think, turn off the average fan who's not sure about the book. The fact that it's basically a book about a long romance through many years. It's a book that very much has tones of Romeo and Juliet. It's written by a woman named Claudia Gray. Claudia Gray is known for writing other young adult books. I've even heard the T word brought up in describing this book. Yes, the T word, Twilight. Star-crossed lovers. Intertwined with the events that happened throughout the original trilogy, and shades of the universe is a small place, but even though it has all that, it won me over. I was truly engaged with this book. I ended up really caring about these characters, and I will say this. Having read this in the the gauntlet of books that I read since Force Friday, I'll say this: I think I'll end up remembering these two characters more than I will remember the characters in Aftermath. Yeah, there I said it. I having read this book, I had a hard time remembering the characters in Aftermath. So. I think that's nothing against Aftermath. It was a good book, but this one just had a little bit more heart to it, a little bit more. I don't know, more engaging. I think the way that Aftermath is presented to us with the interludes is a little bit. Although I appreciate them, it's a little bit makes it more of a disjointed read. Where this is definitely an easier read. I would never classify this as young adult. There's definitely adult themes in this. In any Star Wars book, I really can't discern between what's a young adult and what's adult. It's not for kids, but it's not for it's not X-rated by any means. So, anyway, there you have it. Lost Stars, definitely worth a read if you can grab it. I don't know, are these books even available? I have yet to, since that Friday, I've yet to see these on the shelves. So, somebody grabbed them up and is reading them. If not, I'm sure you can download them from Amazon or the iTunes bookstore, what have you. But yeah, check this one out, folks. That's my take on it. I'm sure that along with this podcast, we will also be giving you another take, another view, another review of the book by our resident reviewer, Steve Schinder. I'm sure he will have quite a larger, in-depth review coming at you if you want to read that. I'm sure we'll be posting that in the next week or so. Maybe, I don't know what his schedule is, but I'm sure he'll be getting it to us soon because I know he's been in the race to finish these books with me. So there you have it, folks. The granular look at Star Wars, Lost Stars. My name is Ron. You've been listening to Delusions of Granular. Until next time, stay granular.
My hands are tied, my body bruised. She got me with nothing to win and nothing left to lose. And you give yourself away, and you give yourself away, and you give, and you give, and you give.